unbeknownst to me, the friend of mine was a little bit of a hack, you'd say. Smartest dumb guy you ever met, but he cut a lot of corners to get the job done. He said, my buddy Chris, race car driver, race car mechanic, my buddy Chris. I get in there, it's like, oh, for Christ's sakes. But then they see the work I did, it's like, oh, one of these things is not like the other. Ingratiated myself that way by just doing a fine job.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting, thought-provoking episode of the Jaded Mechanic Podcast. My name's Jeff, and I'd like to thank you for joining me on this journey of reflection and insight into the toils and triumphs of a career in automotive repair. After more than 20 years of skin knuckles and tool debt, I want to share my perspectives and hear other people's thoughts about our industry. So pour yourself a strong coffee or grab a cold Canadian beer and get ready for some great conversation. It's a Friday night. We are recording in Canada with a fellow Canadian. There's going to be a trend of that more and more, as you see. We're slowly taking over. I'm recording tonight with a gentleman I don't know too well, but reached out to me through the podcast posting about wanting people to put their hands up and be a guest. So I have Christopher Johnson with me tonight. Christopher, how are you?
Not too bad. Yourself?
I'm getting good, man. The weather here is beautiful. It's a long weekend for us, right?
Absolutely. Thank Christ for that.
I'm looking forward to trying. The weather's supposed to hold for the weekend, so I'm hoping to get out and get fishing all 3 days. If my shoulder will hold up to it, then I'll be good. But yeah, you're in Cobourg?
I work in Cobourg. I live in Colburn, which is the next town over, the next affordable borough over.
Yeah, which is
so just down the road from you.
Yeah, which for the people not familiar, probably about an hour from me. Would you say an hour from Kingston?
A little over an hour, probably closer to an hour and a half ish.
Yeah. I'm thinking, past Peterborough, but before Toronto. Yeah, that kind of area. So, not
directly south of Peterborough.
Yeah, Port Hope kind of area. So, and you work at a Mazda dealer.
That I do. I'm the shop foreman there. I mean, there's only 4 of us working in the back, plus our detailer. We got 2 apprentices, 1 young licensed tech. He's just been licensed for just over a year. Then myself, that's been grinding away for the last 20 years professionally.
Yeah. How big is the shop?
We have 4 hoists now. We did have 3, and we had a dry bay, so we turned that into an extra hoist for our EV as well, and an alignment rack, a sunken alignment rack.
Right.
And our detail bay, so very small.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say, 'cause for that area, that's not one of the larger dealers that are starting to pop up around, right? Like they're...
No, we're probably the second smallest. I think the Kia dealer just up the road from us is smaller yet. They have 4 hoists and no alignment rack, and we're the next one up from there. But we do a comparable amount of work to, say, the next Asian car dealer next to us, which is a Honda dealer with a little over half their staff.
Right.
So we turn a lot of work, and we do a lot of good work, and
it's good. And you've been there 20 years?
I've been in the business in the area for 20 years. So I started as probably the American listeners wouldn't know, we have the co-op.
Yeah.
So I went to high school, but I finished late in high school. That's a different story altogether, but went through the co-op program. But even that was different for me, because I helped a guy open a shop from scratch. So we were literally, as a co-op student, it was a friend of my dad's.
Right.
So we worked a deal that way. But we were running plumbing lines, we were running air lines, installing stuff. I helped him open that. So that was a bit of a wild and wacky experience as to getting the first-hand knowledge of working on cars.
So for my American friends, what co-op is referred to up here is where essentially you would go in and work. Like sometimes you worked, say, your morning, and then you went to a job placement, we'll call that, in the afternoon, or some days you would stagger. So you might do 2 days at the school doing traditional classroom classes, and then you would do a couple days away at this job placement, which was trying to help people pick careers. It wasn't always trade heavy. You could, if you wanted to work in a culinary, if you wanted to, they would try and place you in a position to get you real world on the job experience. You didn't normally get paid. Some people did, some people didn't. but it was mostly it counted towards your curriculum, your credits to graduate high school, and then it got your feet wet for what you wanted to do tentatively when you're 16, 17, 18 years old and not sure. So that's what co-op is. If you hear us refer to it, that's what co-op is. Just consider it job placement for the most part. So you took a friend of your father's, was starting a shop from scratch, and you kind of got in and decided to help him do that.
Yeah, because before that, I kind of wanted to get into. I was doing some ice racing, which we do a little up north in Minden.
Yep.
I wanted to race cars. That was my thing, and of course, I had no money to do some race cars, so I got to learn how to do it myself. And it snowballed for 20 years. So I got in, wanted to do that.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you use a friend of your father, so anyone in the family into the industry, like was it as a tech, or just you grew up around race cars? Is that kind of?
Nope, not even that. Because I didn't even get my driver's license until probably almost a year or so after you would normally do that.
Mm-hmm.
Then think I don't want to drive. Got no use for that.
Yeah.
Playing indoor soccer one year and broke my leg. So then I'm sitting in the sitting in our back room. I want to say it was a spring, and flipped through the channels. Champ car race. I want to say it was Detroit, but and watched that. Then I've been watching it ever since. I haven't stopped watching racing since.
Yeah.
So it got hooked and hard.
Yeah, it's a common thread. A lot of us are into the motorsports thing. So you just a friend of your father starting a shop. What was his background? Then can I call him a mentor? Is that a fair?
He was. I did learn quite a bit from him. He has always been a mechanic. I think he'd been in the military and was working at an auto shop that my parents used to use. Then he tried to break out on his own to do work in a small shop. I don't know where he's gone to nowadays, because that didn't last much more than a few years and disappeared into obscurity.
His shop did. It failed.
Yeah, him and I don't know where he went to. Yeah, his shop did eventually fail. He went to work for someone else.
But that's how you got your feet wet in the industry, was with him in co-op.
Then once I got into an actual apprenticeship program, it was at the local Honda dealer. Okay. The owner was a friend of a friend, so I got in there as an apprentice and learned quite a few more things.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a, kind of felt a little bit like a duck out of water, but I've always felt like that going anywhere. So,
because the duck out of water thing, is that because of the fact that you come from a smaller independent in your co-op, and then you get into a dealership?
Yeah, and then it's now I got to do this for a living now. I got to make some money at that. I mean, I was still living at home, had no bills to pay, so it was, no matter what, just at least a good learning experience, and make minimum wage, but it was a good learning experience, and made some good friends there as well.
So they started you at minimum wage at the Honda dealer.
Yeah, I think back then it was like $8 an hour. Early 2000s.
Yeah, that was what it would have been about. Yeah, $7-8. I mean, yeah. So they had you working on cars for minimum wage.
Yeah, pretty well. You're doing oil changes and the slow times. You're out doing, I'm getting the riding lawnmower from the boss's house or something, or delivering bits here and there. So you're doing whatever's necessary in the building.
And so how long did you stay there?
I was there. When I was an apprentice there, I did the day release. So I did the full day release, and I was about to go off that winter for the block program, because day release is terrible.
Yes.
Don't remember a damn thing. You spend the entire next time you're there remembering what the hell you learned the last week.
So again, for my American friends, what he means by day release is when we do what we call our apprenticeship program up here, you can do it two ways, which is you can do it one day a week, where you leave the job and you go to normally a local community college, and you'll sit through a day of classes. And that can take like 6 months to go through, or longer in some cases, I've heard. You sit there one day a week, sit through all your classes. So our classes will be, depending on the level, but fuel and electrical, transmission, like driveline, safety and workplace hazards practices, all that kind of stuff. When you go day release, it is notoriously, the success rate is not so good because you tend to stay focused on the job, what you had at the shop waiting for you when you go back. I never had to do it. I was always I think there were 16-week blocks, so 4 months at a time. And I would go, and that was easier for me to stay focused. It was hard because now you're being laid off from the job essentially, right? And you go work in the shop, so a lot of employers they prefer day release, because up here what happens a lot is they just want you to like get your certification so that legally you can work in the shop. And if you're enrolled as an apprentice, your pay can sometimes be subletted by the government, which is good or bad depending on how you want to look at it. So that's what he means by day releases. Well, he's going 1 day a week. So sorry to interject there, Chris. I just wanted to keep everybody, that isn't a Canadian. They're going to be like, what are they talking about? Yeah, you went through the day release program. That was your first year?
Yeah, I did the first year of that. Then as I was about to go to my second year, so the block program, I was just about to leave and was told that I wasn't coming back. But I think that was in the works for a little bit before that. I'd made some mistakes. Like I'd left some oil leaks. I think in the last straw was I left an oil plug, drain plug loose. I blew up an engine. I fucked up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you're not the first one.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Right.
So I think before that had already been replaced by someone else, but they were just waiting for the bay to be free.
Right.
And once I finished that block program, I went, I think it was 3 weeks at a Mercedes Volvo dealer up in Peterborough.
Ooh.
I said 3 weeks. I wasn't happy up there after the first 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Replied to an ad at a race shop over at Mosport, or Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, as people know now. And as I was loading my box into my trailer from the Mercedes, got the phone call. When can you start? Well, I can come over there right now because I'm mobile.
Yeah.
Right now. So, and that started a 7-year career as a race car mechanic.
Wow. Right on.
I learned a lot of stuff, a lot of good stuff there.
Yeah.
Found out a lot of bad things, but that's not what we were doing. But and a lot about that business as well. But that was a mechanic and wrenching experience and a work ethic experience that is hard to replicate anywhere else.
Yeah.
The amount of work ethic we've developed doing that, and to be able to do that on a regular basis. People are paying for race weekends. They got paying clients in cars, and we're taking care of customer cars and racing them all weekend. And if we're down south, we've got schedules to keep.
Yeah.
And which people are paying for. So then you learn to prioritize how you're working and getting stuff done efficiently and working as a team. And that's where a lot of the core values I've got now as a regular, a streetcar mechanic, comes from that and keeps that. And that's,
it's the attention to detail, right? That is so, I want to say, carries over so well from motorsports into the everyday wrenching, right? I think that's kind of, even if you're not necessarily, because not every race car is super fast. I mean, that's what we have to remember. Some classes are not all that quick. I mean, they're fun, but it's still a situation of, details matter to finish in the race or not finish in the race, right?
Yeah, like I've got a $5,000 Honda that I used to race. We beat the crap out of Porsches and BMWs and whatnot, but the same attention to detail to that $5,000 car is the same that we spend on our $250,000, $300,000 Trans Am series cars.
Exactly. Like, so you're working on a lot of high end cars at that point, like high dollar stuff.
Most of the work when I started there was we had a lot of vintage Corvettes, and we had C5 Corvettes, mostly all custom race builds. So all the old C3s that we had were all race cars since they were C3s, so they were all vintage and mostly owned by the owner of the shop. But we did have a lot of other cars drop in and out. Then a few years down the road into that, it developed into a bigger race shop with a couple other owners coming in. Okay. And we started to build a lot of Trans Am series race cars, which are tube frame chassis, silhouette body, big fire breathing monsters, and they're fantastic.
Yeah, right on. It's funny, or it's actually kind of sad in some ways that stock cars never really taken off as big in Canada, right? As like, because I mean, it's not for, we got lots of talented drivers, and
absolutely,
it's not a situation of, I just think that I don't know why. I don't know why. I have a friend, and her son races Cascar, does really well. But it's a struggle when you talk to them. Like, you think that they're getting paid really good. Like, no, they're looking for sponsors every weekend just to get the tires on the car. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a ticket to get in.
Yeah, it's a different thing. So it's too bad. The Corvette classes and all that stuff, I'll be totally honest, I'm not a motorsports guy. So it's always like, the money has always been something that has been like, I just can't justify that expense. I mean, it's like anything else. If you love it, you love it, right? People look and it's like, why would you spend $100,000 on a bass boat to catch fish out of? Well, nobody's ever not smiling in a bass boat, but it's the same in a race car. It's just whatever you're into. So the detail thing, how did that? Did you have an adjustment period because you moved on from that into back to a traditional kind of wrenching experience job?
Yeah, back in about, I want to say the end of 2013, the race shop was getting bought up by different owners, and the owners that I was working for were splitting ways, and I didn't want to necessarily stay with who was staying with, and I couldn't go with the owner I wanted to go with. There just wasn't the room, and he set up his own business, and that's all he does right now is as a race car business. Mm-hmm. But at the time, it wasn't for me. It wasn't my cards, so to speak. Then at least luckily before that, I had already finished my third year, then went to write my ticket a couple of years before that. So I got my ticket in 2011.
Right.
I said, I'm going to need something to fall back on. I'm going to need, or just in case, or if something's changed. And lo and behold, I did need that. And that's, save my bacon so I could go into earn a living again.
Yeah. What he means by ticket is like what we call it, our ticket up here is our trade license that we have to have in order to be employed legally anyway as a technician in the shop. It's government, obviously government sponsored, government funded, government regulated by province. Some provinces have slightly different, but it's all pretty much the same. Quebec is the wild, wild west. It's a wide open thing there. They don't recognize it. And it always has been that way in Quebec. They
don't recognize a lot of things.
Yeah. That's not hating on them. They're great people.
No, it's
just it's a different
racers.
Yeah, different culture there. So what he means when he says ticket is it's just our legal license that we need to stay in good standing with to be employable. The license pretty much in the end of it means is that when a car has to be inspected to be deemed safe for sale, you have to have a license. And then if you're working in a shop that's performing safety related repairs, you're supposed to be a licensed technician, or you're supposed to be an apprentice that's enrolled within the system that has the work checked over by a licensed technician. That's what he means by ticket. So if you hear me say ticket, that's all I mean is just our license. So it's important what he's saying is when you're coming out of if you don't get one, and there are guys without a ticket working in the industry without a license in our province and in our country. They traditionally don't make a whole lot of money, and they're constantly kind of looking over their shoulder to make sure that somebody doesn't come and knock on the door. And I've worked with a couple of them in shops that had to transition out of working as mechanics into an admin role because they legally couldn't be on the shop floor working. So that's the difference between up here. It's kind of the equivalent of saying you couldn't get hired without an ASE would be, I guess, is what you could say from the American standpoint, is if you don't have an ASE certification, you can't work. That's kind of what they're saying up here. When we pass our exam, we're not recognized as ASE certified. because it's a different thing. But it's a level of competency. You have to pass the test. So very important in this industry that you have that up here. Otherwise, you're not getting a job. So, yeah.
It pretty much means that you've at least have a working knowledge of cars, as I was 5 years out of working on street cars when I got my license, and I passed with like an 81 or 80 some odd percent.
Yeah.
And there was hybrid questions on there, and hybrids didn't really exist when I worked in cars.
Right.
Worked in the car side or street car side.
Yeah. So you got out of the race shop. Where did you go?
I went to, I was living up in Peterborough, so just north of us here, about say half an hour north of Port Hope, at a Honda dealer there, because a friend of mine worked there. Got in contact with him. I'd known him from hanging back out here in Coburg. I'd hang out with friends at the Timmy's, because that's what we do here when you have nothing to do.
Yeah. It doesn't matter where you go in Canada, right? Every Tim Hortons, it used to be back in the day anyway, if you were a car guy. Tim Hortons is a coffee and donut shop for people that don't know, but by now everybody should know. You've all heard me enough. So the way that used to be is that you would hang around the coffee shop, Tim Hortons, Friday nights, Saturday nights, sometimes Sunday nights, sometimes a Thursday night, and just lean up on your car and, shoot the shit and talk crap to other people that tell them their rod was slow or whatever. And a lot of street racing up here, kind of, that was the scene, I guess, is where you might hang out. And, street racing wasn't as big here as obviously, the hotbed, California, Oklahoma, that kind of stuff, where but we did have the Toronto area, which, Christopher's not that far from. At one point we had some of the absolute fastest front wheel drive Hondas that were on the continent. So I can't remember the one, but he was one of the first Hondas to go in the 8s, I think. They shot a documentary years ago about it. The name escapes me, but yeah, he had a white one, clapped out thing, but it was stupid fast. He made a lot of money racing that car around Toronto, and every cop knew that car. So that's what Tim Hortons and the car culture is up here in Canada. So
every small town Ontario is every small town Ontario. They're all kind of the same. They all have a pizza shop, a couple of Timmy's, and it's the same people hanging out at the same places. It's your muscle car guys, your hot rod, your Hondas, your Asian import guys. Yeah. And you got the old folks coming in and out getting their coffee. Yeah.
Complaining about how full the parking lot is with nobody buying anything.
Yeah. Every town. They're all the same.
Yeah. So that's how you found the job at the Honda dealership, was through that kind of.
Yeah. A buddy of mine that I knew from, actually as an apprentice, we were an apprentice together at Coburg Honda. And he made his way up to Peterborough, was working as a licensed tech up there. So he got me in there. I got the interview and got the job. And that was a very good experience. It was initially, I had a bit of a target on my back because, unbeknownst to me, the friend of mine was a little bit of a hack, you'd say. The smartest dumb guy you ever met, but he cut a lot of corners to get the job done.
Yeah.
And he said, my buddy Chris, race car driver, race car mechanic, my buddy Chris, and I get in there, it's like, oh, for Christ's sakes. But then they see the work I did, it's like, oh, one of these things is not like the other. And ingratiated myself that way by just doing a fine job.
So that was a wake-up call for you to work with him, and realize that, like, he was way different about how he approached the job than you.
Yeah, the working job, the way he treated his own cars to get around, that's one thing, but the way he treated the customer's car is should be something entirely different.
Yeah.
And it wasn't him, it was almost worse, but
wow.
That's the way he chose to make a living. That's certainly not the way I chose to make a living. Like, he's actually kind of a good, like, diagnostic tech and a good tech. He could find things out very quickly, just to get to the end game, cut quite a few corners, and that never flew with me because we couldn't do that in race cars. You're gonna kill someone if you do that. And
he lacked refining, is what you're saying. So
yes.
Yeah. Now, is it fair to say that might have been because of the difference in background? Like, had he been a flat rate mechanic a lot, or always like pushed by the clock? And because I'm not trying to say that motorsports and race cars doesn't have time schedule, right? But I mean, you're kind of given a little bit more time, right? It's about precision and detail, like we talked about. Was he just that way because that's what the clock made him that way, or is he just?
I think he made himself that way. With the way I know the other techs in that shop, and a few of them are still there, and they're great techs. Mm-hmm. They were more interested in doing the job they're getting paid for than getting paid for the job that they're doing.
Right.
And so they weren't as cocked. They knew they got paid to work on the car once, and that was it.
Yeah.
They didn't want any comebacks, and they had integrity, pride in their work.
Yeah, that's it. That's a key thing. I've worked with not lots. I've worked with a few mechanics that comeback. I remember one. He was right next to me. He used to say, "It's just another opportunity. A comeback's just another opportunity to make money." Right? Which is not, thank God, is not the concept that is. Yeah, at every dealer. I'm not trying to say that every dealer thinks like that or whatever. It's just that was his attitude next to me, and I'd be lying if I said he wasn't right. There was lots of times that he got a comeback and he got more hours sold on the job and another kick of the can. And, I don't endorse it. It wasn't good, but it did happen a lot. So, and it happens a lot in not just dealerships. It happens a lot where people are incentivized. I'm going to go out and say it, it does happen. Is it right or wrong? Well, it's probably wrong. But I mean, if you're on the other side of the coin and you weren't given enough time to diagnose it all the way to the end, and you run out of time or run out of budget, and somebody says take a guess, and the guess was wrong, is that really a comeback? We could talk for hours on a whole other episode about what is technically a comeback, because you've got the customer side, the technician side, management side, really is all three of them line up. So, a comeback, if you change a water pump for a coolant leak and it was never the water pump, it was the, fitting above it or something, that's a comeback. But I mean, if you take that same car and it's like leaking out of coolant out of every frost plug, coolant hose, the whole thing. And the biggest one is the water pump, and you put it on and say, will need to be rechecked. And you put the water pump in and it no longer leaks, but it still has a coolant leak. Is that really a comeback? That's where perspective comes in. So anyway, not to go on a rant, but so he wasn't the best shining star within your dealership.
No. And everyone knew that before, and also, or before me starting there as well. So that was, hence his nickname was Hack.
Yeah. But it put a magnifying glass on you, because they probably thought you were guilty of that by association, right? And yet,
generally speaking, yeah. That's, as I say, it literally almost literally had a target on my back when I got there. Then, as I say, I'd just go in and do my thing and prove them wrong. And
yeah.
So, and as I said, made a lot of good friends there, because the foreman we had there, he's still there, like just an amazing tech.
Yeah.
And just an amazing person as well.
Yeah.
He'd always help you out with everything. He would drop everything to help you and get you to the solution that you needed. Or if you're bound up on something like bolt snaps in a frame, then we got to drill it out. He'll work around to get you some extra hours to
get it done,
to compensate for that.
Yeah.
Well, you have to compensate for that. If the apprentice next to you has to do a PDI for you, here's an extra little bit just to compensate for you.
Was it a shock for you to go? Because I'm assuming then when you were licensed and you went to that dealer, they weren't hourly, right? They were probably on flat rate.
Absolutely flat rate. So I got 2 months. I think my first 2 months was hourly.
Yeah.
Because I had never worked flat rate before. The general manager knew that, and he said, here's, I think it was like 2 or 3 months. I also had some of the training to catch up on the online training. So when I wasn't doing anything, do the Honda training, catch up, and I can learn without having to be fast off the hop. I can get to learn their processes for knowing the product, learning the processes, and getting the job completed as it should be. Then after that, go flat rate.
Yeah. And did you So in that first 2 months, and that's awesome. I've seen, I think most I've ever myself, I think, was I got 2 weeks when you go to a different dealer. 2 months is awesome. I've never even heard of that in the industry. That is great that they give you 2 months. That shows some real faith in how much they want you in that facility, right? That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Did you find
sorry, go ahead. That was I think that was the manager at the time. They don't have that manager there now, and
yeah,
I always had some issues with him when I was there, but now I realize after the fact and working more in the industry, I realized he was a really good manager, and he's gone on from there. But he ran the shop as it needed to be, and it was a darn good shop.
Yeah. Did you find when you first got on that you were slow? Like the detail driven, meticulous of the race car, did you find yourself at a disadvantage trying to get some of the jobs done? Like, was there an adjustment, or did you had no issues getting the work done?
I don't think I had any issues getting the work done, because even as a race car mechanic, I knew, as I say, sometimes we are on a crunch, and you know, if in between sessions we're changing transmission, so we're doing that as fast as possible.
Right.
But you learn to work on a team as well. So
yeah.
No, I don't. I was not slowed or hampered by that at all. I think it actually helped quite a lot. I could do things. I do things even now the same way, and it just works for you. You just get faster at that.
Yeah, you develop a process, right? If you've done that repair or done that removal or whatever you want to call it, that component comes out. If you have a process to do it, it's just like anything else. You're pretty fast with it, right? That's how we all do. I use tires as an example. That's how we all do tires so fast in the industry, right? Unless you're really fighting some, giant ones that won't blow on the bead, or some really thin, low profile stuff with not the best machine. Because who hasn't done a million tires by the time they're 10 years into the trade, right? Like you all have. And that's how it's muscle memory, right? Like, well, that's good that you went into the flat rate thing. You had no issues, made money.
Yeah, I made some money, and starting out slow, worked my way up, and started working more and more. And as we got to different service advisors as well, I wound up getting some better work back and more work back, and I started going up and doing a lot better, as I said, monetarily.
And
getting lots of experience.
Yeah, it's some, and that's the thing. That could be a big difference from one dealer to the next, how fast they progress you through, right? And I think oftentimes more than not, it's just opportunities. People, leave a shop and they'll take a guy from, like, you've seen it, I've seen it. 1 minute you might be working in the service lane just doing quick loops, and the next minute you're like, okay, you're shadowing this foreman. Or they might give you a bay and go, okay, we're going to give you a bunch of recalls and before you know it, you're moving up pretty fast, right? I've seen some guys progress pretty quick because they have an aptitude of being able to get that transmission out, or those, like, that kind of stuff. Jam the front end was really impressive to see. Some kids, they just seemed like they took to it like it was instinct. Diag was one of those things that, like, I haven't seen one yet that came in that had a natural aptitude for it. You know what I mean? It's such a process to learn. But I mean, in terms of the nuts and bolts stuff, I saw some really talented young people just seem to take to it real quick. Sometimes to the detriment, because they just wanted to stay doing that.
Yeah, didn't want to learn anything else. They knew that, and they could get money at that. And all right, no, my gas and my rent is paid for, and then some, and that's it. And I can just keep doing that.
Yeah, I've seen transmission guys go that way, right? They seem, and in defense of that, I think it's such a specialized thing, the transmission thing, especially within one product line, that once you really learn it and learn it well, yeah, you get fast and you get good kind of at the same time. And then it's just, you're always, and they're in such a demand, right, Christopher, that it's like, it'd be really hard. I've never seen a transmission guy stop being a transmission guy until physically his body, the lifting was just too much. The rest of the time it's like, well, whatever you need to stay doing transmissions, we're going to make sure you get that, right? Like it's whether it's money or whatever, because they're so valuable. It's not something that anybody in the dealer. I mean, yeah, guys can take them in and out. Yep. But if you've got to go in there and fix the damn thing and put it back in because warranty maybe isn't sending you a complete unit, they're just sending you, oh, you're going to go and do a torque and a front pump, or you're going to do, a third clutch. Well, that's complete down tear down, right? Lots of guys can take the unit in and out, the tear down and rebuild. I can't do that. I'd be lying if I told anybody that I could. I haven't done it since trade school. I have no interest in doing it. It doesn't interest me. It's
we had remember the GM front wheel drive automatics, and that's the only time I've had one apart and put back together, and that was it. Manual transmissions, I could take those apart. Probably have taken them apart and rebuilt them in my sleep. Especially Honda B series stuff. I could have literally done those at 3 a.m. and had zero issues. And
but I mean, they're a different thing, right? I'm used to I'm not used to it, but I mean, I understand the same thing. A standard tranny inside, I understand that much better than I do. Not that I don't understand the automatic stuff, but it's just like, there's a lot going on in there, right? Whereas if you're just sliding a gear up a shaft, my brain does better with that. So yeah. So, so you were not specialized in the dealer then?
No, we were all pretty generalized. We were all capable of all doing the same kind of work, and that's kind of the experience I've had at all the dealerships I've worked at.
Okay.
Up to this point, is everyone's general. Everyone gets used to the same kind of work. Like if you're doing, back in the day, we're doing the Civic engines for the coolant leak, the R18 engines.
Yeah.
Everyone's getting their turn at doing one of those. Then when the piston ring recalls came out in the Odysseys, everyone's getting their turn at doing that. This work sucks. You're all doing it. All that kind of thing. That way you don't have to rely on someone, if someone's off for a week or two, well, you can't not book that stuff in. Well,
right. Exactly.
Yes, everyone needs to be able to do the same work or understand what each other is doing as well.
And
they can step in and help.
Those repairs, I remember, like I didn't work on Honda, but I've seen the bulletins and everything else. They're pretty in depth what they tell you how it has to get done, right? So I mean, it's if you can wrench, you can get that job done, right? And done the way it's supposed to get done and have a successful repair. You might be slow at it, but you can get it done, and that's the key thing. A lot of it, when I saw specialized dealers, just like you said, and that's the thing I've seen is that dealerships, as they get bigger, guys it just seems to naturally that people become specialized within it. And I think that, I don't know if that's a car count thing that drives it, where, okay, like we're starting to see a rash of this problem electrically, and you figured out the first one. So now every time that customer comes in with that kind of complaint, we're going to have that guy look at it. Right. And that's, I think, how it goes. The problem, like you said, when it becomes specialized and there's a lot of that specialty, sometimes those guys really have, and gals, have the dealership at a disadvantage because they know how valuable they are to the day-to-day. If you're getting a ton of transmissions coming in, Nissan, hello, and and Nissan does not rebuild them, at least in Canada. We don't rebuild them much. It's straight re and re's. But I've talked to guys when I was at my Nissan tenure where they were in the dealerships in the States, and when they started to roll out the rebuilding plan for them, which didn't work, the guys that did a lot of them became very specialized and in high demand within the dealer, and they were then used it to their advantage for a pay bump. So that's what I saw within my experience at the dealership, because we were in a big one in Ottawa, like 20 techs. Guys were just naturally specialized. And then what would happen is if, your front end guy was gone, front end really slowed down in terms of getting the alignments done, getting in front of, because he was gone on holidays, he was off sick or whatever. It's a different way of thinking about it, and other shops, I think they deal with it all the time. I think even everybody doesn't realize sometimes how specialized anybody can be in a shop. Even if you're not specialized, you might just be better at one thing than your coworkers. So when you're still gone, there's still a gap there. But I'm on the fence about whether people should specialize or not. I think if it's lucrative, you should. If it's not lucrative, well, maybe go to some place that it is, because I think we all are naturally predispositioned to certain things we do better than others. Some guys read a wiring diagram really good, but if they had to rebuild a tranny, they'd suck. That's me putting my hand up. Other guys are really, really good at fast doing an engine. But they struggle with reading a wiring diagram. So I think specialty can be a plus. So, but you guys weren't.
Yeah. That it certainly can be, but I think, we always tried to. Everyone got whatever they got.
Yeah,
we learned the product, and if we are having problems with something, ask anyone else in the shop, and they'd help. There was, I think, 6 or 7 of us that were licensed up there.
Okay.
And maybe about 3 apprentices and a couple of lube jockeys, because they had the quick lane down below, which was just oil changes. So everything greater than an oil change came up top.
Right.
But we were all there to help each other, especially, let's say, our shop foreman was Ken Nishitoba, and Lottie, who was, I think he'd been working there for probably about 15 years from Slovakia. Before that, like a bull, just keeps on doing work, but he's done everything, and he can at least help guide you the way you should.
Very familiar with the product, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's such an advantage when you spend a long tenure. You see a whole development, right, of the product from when it's a conception to when it's 12, 13 years old, and it's, on its last legs, it so well. I joke about the caravans, right? I've seen, when I worked there, I saw 3 different generations of caravans. So, I mean, you get to know a caravan pretty good. So, still my favorite vehicle to work on by far. Nothing even comes close. So, they're just a level of familiarity. I mean, they're garbage. They really are. They're a hot garbage, but they're
make you so much money.
Oh, just money makers, right? But Honda was like that back in the day too, right? Like everybody I knew that worked in a Honda dealer, you couldn't get them to leave it. Like it just seemed like the customers really loved the cars. Honda was very pro maintenance, very, I don't want to say regimented, but it seemed like the people selling the car made it a point to say, this thing has, it's not your dad's Chevy. It's a Honda, and it needs to be maintained. And here's the schedule, and you should be doing it here. And people just went, okay, great. I get a timing belt done. And, my ex, her grandparents were diehards. I mean, they drove nothing but Hondas for like 25 years, and they were all like first name basis with everybody in the dealership. And it was just, when it was, they knew, okay, next year is going to be they were booking their timing belt services like a year out, just so that, they could definitely get it in and get it done. Maintenance was that important to them. I wish every customer was like that. So they were great.
The Asian cars, very maintenance heavy, which is kind of good for a tech. You're guaranteed to get some work in as long as they do the maintenance. But some people don't get the maintenance thing of keeping the car running, just not just fixing what's broken, but keeping it from breaking on you in the first place.
But Hondas were so resilient back then, right? Like they were a great car for people that even neglected them, because they would,
as long as you keep oil and just check the gas, top up the oil, and away you go.
Yeah, great cars. Toyotas too, right? Nissan, not so much. Mazda, not so much.
Mazda allowed to last, since they bought themselves out from Ford, at least, has gone quite up. I mean, we don't, at least in our little market here, we don't see a whole lot, especially under warranty. We get, the occasional cylinder head leak, and right now we're dealing with valve seals on the turbo engines, but that's but not a whole lot, at least in our little market, because a lot of our customers are good with the maintenance and getting that done.
When did you sorry, go ahead.
Said when you get some people that are new to the Asian cars and the heavy on the maintenance, they're like, well, I never had to do that with whatever I owned before. No. Just because you didn't do it didn't mean you probably shouldn't have done it.
Right. Yeah.
But that's a argument for a different day with them.
You had a Chevy Cruze, and then you go into like a Honda or a Mazda. Yeah, you don't do necessarily a lot of maintenance on a Chevy Cruze because it's a Chevy Cruze. It's like going to be a pile no matter what you do to it, right? But an Accord or Civic or Camry or Corolla or something like that, they're worth doing the maintenance because back then at least they built a car that could go $1 million, right? I don't know if GM's ever built a car that goes to $1 million. Trucks maybe, but certainly not a car. So you stayed at Honda for how long?
I think I was there until February of 2015. I left there and went, because I had bought a house in the next town over, Lindsay.
Yeah.
Then got myself a job at an offer I couldn't refuse at the Kia dealership there. I mean, it was a $5 an hour bump in pay.
Yeah.
And 3 minutes door to door. So I mean, it was hard not to do that.
Yeah.
And I missed the guys that I was working with. Like, I was leaving with a heavy heart. I was leaving because I had a lot of personal issues that had kind of built up to then, which we can get to in a bit, which is the core of what's made me, I think, who I am now, and as a tech, especially. But for the $5 an hour bump in pay and 2 minutes door to door, and no weekends, that was kind of a no brainer.
Yeah, I graduated from Sanford Fleming in Lindsay in like 1998.
At the Frost campus.
Yeah.
Right. So my brother might have been. No, he was at Trent U probably about then.
Yeah.
Then he went to the Frost campus after that. So
the town is a lot different now. Lindsay, from when I was there, a lot different. So
I think a lot of the small towns in this area, even that area, are a lot different now. Even Coburg now used to be like a nice, clean, quiet town, and now it's just rife with the the drug-addled mess in the downtown.
Well, the city keeps getting bigger and people keep moving out, right? It's the same. It happened the same in Ottawa. It's happening in my city too, right? We're getting a lot of people moving east or west from the two big cities that I'm in the middle of, right? Ottawa and Toronto, and they wind up in Kingston. And, it's not that they're not welcome. We're not trying to say that. It's just it's Lindsay was a cool little town when I was there in late 90s, and quiet, pretty. And now I still haven't back to Lindsay. I was in Peterborough last summer. That's where I ended up buying my Wrangler there. But even like Peterborough looked so different than what I remember. Yeah. So
it's changed, man.
Yeah. How was that? You probably didn't have any issues transferring from Honda to Mazda.
Nope. I say when I went to Kia or Lindsay, I was at a Kia dealership. Then,
sorry, right? Yeah.
And no, it's like Asian cars are Asian.
Yeah.
Let's say Asian cars are Asian cars. Yeah. You can only put so many things in so many places. They're all mostly the same. The only thing that changes is your service info a little bit, and that's it, really. Yeah. And the customer base changes a little bit, especially in Lindsay. But we always had lots of work, and the manager I knew from Honda, she had been a service advisor there and went to be the service manager at the Kia dealer. So that was my in there. She knew how it worked and gave the offer, and that was that.
Yeah. Different level of quality on a Kia versus a Honda, though. The way the car is, which sometimes brings in a different customer. But I found they get a bad rap, really, Kia and Hyundai. But I mean, for what you pay, you get a pretty good car, I think. Like
you're getting a lot crammed into that car nowadays for not a lot. But I think the where that falls short is the repairs at the end. Some of their parts are ungodly expensive for almost no apparent reason.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's just a supply issue. It seems like every time we need something from Kia or Hyundai from the dealer, and it has to be a dealer, it's like a week out before we can get it. And then the same thing would be like you'll need a door latch, and it's like $350 and it's going to take a week to get there. And you're like, it's a door latch for like a 14 Sportage, right? Like, I mean, why does it cost so much money? Like, oh, it is what it is. Okay.
And one for our Mazda 3s is $1.25.
Like, imagine, eh? Yeah. How do I make that work?
Something.
Yeah. So when you talk about what made you the kind of tech that you are, you're not just speaking about the race car thing then. Do you want to elaborate on that?
That I can, and that's kind of the core of me being here. Maybe call it a bit of a therapy session, but I mean, mostly in the last 4 to 5 years, I've changed as a person. I've changed, which I think has also helped change me as a mechanic. Not just my, core and like how I work on the car and the work ethic and whatnot, but it's just my attitude to the industry as well.
Right.
As like when I first started as a licensed tech at the Honda dealer in 2013, I gave myself 5 years and like, I'm doing this. I got to get out. I don't like the industry, but I think mostly I realize nowadays what I don't like or didn't like was myself. I've hated myself and I've had a lot of issues with dealing with people and, being pushed around and being overshadowed and like, brought down. But that's ever since I was a little kid.
Right.
And, always feeling different and feeling, I say, just beat down and kept aside. So I've always kept to myself, up until meeting my wife and starting a family. A couple of weeks before that, I'd have sold my house, sold everything I had, and been glad to move to the middle of nowhere and not talk to anyone, get out of the industry, get out of life in general. And since having the family, well, now I've got to provide for them. Now I've got 2 kids, but just after the birth of our first kid, sorry,
no,
struggling for a word here. Thought, as my wife was looking at our son, thinking something might be like slightly off. Then like he was a little delayed, a little here and there. Right now he's like a happy, wonderful child.
Right.
But as we get along, he's missing some marks, whatnot. But I'm looking at him thinking there's nothing wrong. He's me.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm sitting there literally looking at a carbon copy of myself. And as we find out a couple years later, I'm thinking, yeah, I don't want to admit that something's off, and because would also be admitting that something's off with me.
Right.
But as we got him tested, and he's has ASD, which is autism spectrum disorder.
Yeah. Which
nowadays, that's I don't want to say fairly common, but it's very well known, very able to deal with and whatnot.
I know.
Still looking at.
Yeah, I know so many mechanics in the industry, so many with that are either on it or have children that are on it and in it, whatever is how you're supposed to say it, and from varying different levels. And it's fascinating to see how it's just another thing that we in this industry have in common, right? And that we can kind of find support with,
Yeah. That's probably where a lot of the attention to detail can come in too, being able to focus on stuff, and that's where it clicks in your head. Like, but you don't realize it until later on. But as I'm, watching my son run around, like that's me. And then I realize, well, that's, back in the 80s.
Yeah.
Growing up as a kid, because I'll be 40 here in a couple of weeks. That, ASD almost didn't exist. You were Asperger's or non-functioning. That a lot of that didn't exist. You were just a troubled child or shy or
hyper, overlooked. Too much sugar. Yeah, your diet was all wrong. That's what we used to say. Like when we had super hyperactive kids when I was coming up, we always just their parents just load them up on sugar and then send them to school. Yeah. It didn't matter what they ate; they were just hyper. Lucas is a hyper person. And then David is the completely opposite. David is you want to talk about a guy that understands detail and thinks on a different level? That's him. The two of them together are it's a magic couple. They are phenomenal together and what they achieve and what they do. But it's so neat to see how they're so different, right? Like, so cool. I'm just starting to meet more people that their children have it, right? And it's fascinating to me to see it, because it's like, I mean, I've even 30 years ago, they would have said, well, that you spank that out of the kid, right? And we know that you can't do that. It doesn't work that way. It's
no, and yeah, you were either a troubled child or in school, they would just, pass you on to the next teacher and on to the next teacher and on to the next teacher, and then try and pass you through. And, but realizing that now, that's looking at him, that's why I was the way I was and how I felt all through life. And once I realized, really accept that, I was like, that's kind of the weight off my shoulder. Like, I've got a reason now. How you always look, you get a troubled car, it's not like a bag of hammers, got this electric problem. You want to dig for that problem. And that was, I dug for that problem and it cropped up. And
so it became almost like a superpower. It becomes a superpower for you then, really, instead of a hindrance, right? If you learn how to direct it, it's a strength.
It does. And that's exactly what I've been able to do the last, few years, especially, and, turn my life around. Like, when I started, once I moved down to the Mazda dealer, I was a bit of an asshole. I had an attitude, but I had, anger outbursts and whatnot. But I've had those, the last 30 years before that. And now knowing why, or having a bit of a reasoning to it, I've had an attitude change and I've had the personality change click in me, and like, all right, let's work with this. Let's change this now. And it's been a good, I think I've been there 6 years. So at least the last, well, my son's 4, oldest son's 4 now. So the last 4 years have been, I think, really good. And
so once you learn
to step up in the industry.
Yeah. Once you learn how to harness it, then, right, you can get control of it and use it to your, I don't want to say your advantage, right? But I mean, you can kind of get on that waveform of mindset and then knock out some pretty complicated stuff, right? When you're detail oriented like that. Am I detail oriented? Somewhat, but I'm still of like, that, okay, I don't really care. I just need to get it done, right? That's more my mentality.
Close enough.
Yeah. I'm not a hack, but it's just, as I've done this so long now, I can still remember what I did to fix it, but I don't necessarily even remember why. I just remember my body clicks to that symptom, that sound, whatever. I immediately go to that part of the car, really quickly check if it's the exact same thing that I can remember from my memory bank. And then most of the time it is, so it's not detail driven that way. It's detail that I can remember details, but I don't think about it like detail process. You know what I mean? So I remember the detail that failed, but my whole process is not detail process. It's like throw a whole bunch of things at the board and see what sticks. So in a roundabout way, it's just, I've told people all the time, like, if you watch me diagnose a car, you'd be like, oh my God, how does he get anything done? But I can't describe it. It's just, it's a lot of intuition and a lot of, I spend a lot of time looking at data and wiring before I tend to even put a tool on a car. So I spend so much time looking at data now, not as much as probably some of the other guys, because I don't get as much of that work. But even on a diagnostic, I'll stare at the scanner for 40 minutes. People go 40 minutes. But yeah, that, why do I need to, if the scanner will tell me what it's doing, I don't have to rip that corner of the harness out. You know what I mean? If the scanner's like, and it's just little things like that. And I work with other guys and they immediately go to the component, flip it over, look at it, unplug it, whatever. Oh, there's no green goo there, and it goes somewhere else. I'm looking at the scanner going all the time or whatever, going, okay, well, that's normal. That's working. I don't even need to go touch that. You know what I mean? And go somewhere else.
Yeah, move on. You've already checked that off. Nope. So
but it's such an intuition thing for me and an emotion thing that sometimes they're like, you're 20 minutes ago, you're at the back of the car and now you're at the front. Yeah, I know, but I'm just like, I got a hunch. So don't be like me is what I'm trying to say. Be more detail driven. So, yeah. So you kind of just got comfortable with it. And then, so how did your skills really improve? Or is it fair to say they did?
I think they have. I mean, the actual ground, as I call it, ground and pound, working on cars, doing brakes, doing suspension. That's what. And I always did find that I did struggle with, especially electrical diags. I love them, but I felt I sucked at them. It took forever and never quite knew where to go. Right. And I was actually working on one of our problem cars at Mazda. Like, our service info doesn't really help me with the symptoms and the classic YouTube. And of course, I came across a Scanner Danner video on exactly the car I was working on, exactly the problem. It was a bit of a silver bullet, but that opened my mind to, what the hell have I been doing? Like, I know nothing, and I need to know more. So
can you reference what car it was and what video?
It was a Mazda 3. Okay. That was a tow-in. They had as a tow-in from an auction car or something, and it was the rotted out ground on the ECM relay.
Yep.
Which nowadays I've done quite a few of those.
Yep.
Now to repair it, like, oh yeah, it's that. But I've also done as he did, tested went and tested, and exactly as he did, like, that's it. And that's when that kind of set off the fire in me to, all right, I don't know as much as I should, and I want to know a lot more, and that will help me be an even better technician and just a better asset to myself and to the company. And because I snowballed from there.
I find that, and you might find it too, right? Like, Paul is huge in the industry, right? I mean, like, we can't say that enough. He gets mad. I mentioned him, and it seems like just about every video, but I mean, he's had that much of an effect. But what's weird with Paul is that there's not, like, the guys that seem to work on all makes and models know Paul. But a lot of the dealership guys, right? If I talk to my dealership friends, maybe only half of them know about Paul, right? Because it's a different way of thinking, right? The dealership, we pattern failure, and you might know a guy on YouTube that is a dealer tech and he's, not killing it. So you tend to follow him. But you're not interested. Some dealer techs are not interested in other makes, other models. They don't care, right? I'm just here to make my money and show me how to fix my car faster. I make more money. I was the same way. I didn't find Paul until after I was out of the dealership. And then I've gone back into the dealership and out again and in and again and out. And but everything that he has ever taught transfers to anything you ever work on. That's the beauty of Paul, right? So
it does. I think seeing him, and then even that video, then watching as much as I possibly could on YouTube until I bought a subscription.
Yeah.
To the premium. And that kind of saved my career as a technician. I think that drove me further, and like, I need to know more. And as I say, it applies to everything. It applies to our Mazdas. We have a used car department. When we were running out of Mazdas to sell, we got nothing. We're getting Toyotas and Dodges and you name it coming in. I got to work on them.
Yep.
I got to fix them so we can sell them. So I got to know how to work on those. So
isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing though? You're almost like, I want to say probably a master level, like OE trained technician, right? But a guy like Paul and his platform and it's not just you, it's countless, thousands of guys exactly like yourself. They see one of his videos and then they realize there's more levels to this. I can level up in my abilities and my, like, it's so, we'll never say enough about what he's done for the industry. He doesn't even realize it. He has an idea, but he doesn't realize he's too humble. But that's what's so amazing, right? Is when I meet guys like yourself and other people, and they talk about him. It's the same thing. They were excellent mechanics, right, on that product line. And then he's still able to teach them. You're trained by how the OE wants you trained, right? You do it the way the OE wants you to do it. And then you meet a guy like him, and he totally turns the world upside down with showing you how to do it so much faster, so much more efficient, right? And you don't even think about it because you're just, I read the flow chart and I do the testing the way they want and all that kind of stuff. what he's been able to teach us has like made us all so much better, you know.
So
that
I
was
couldn't
you
agree
too.
more with that. Yeah, absolutely. That's like I was, at the Mazda dealer, learning the business, learning a bit of the front, like the service end of things. From the management point, I was trying to working my way, not working my way there, but trying to understand more of the management end of things so that I can be a bit more of a better shop foreman here in the few years as we grow and can move myself off the flat rate ending. But that's helped me just as a tech so much.
Gives you direction, right?
A lot of direction
you
and
didn't
just
know. Direction you didn't even know you
and ways of thinking as well. Just some better ways of thinking about things. And now they can ask me a problem there. It's like, oh, well, check this and this and this, and have them go off and check it. Oh, yeah, it's around that, just because of it's now second nature.
Yeah. And we all think that we have good fundamentals. And then you go spend a whole bunch of hours with him and you realize that your fundamentals are not that good. Like his fundamentals are phenomenal. And then other people's like that he's taught and has such a huge influence on, their fundamentals are phenomenal. Right. But it all comes back to it's just fundamentals. He keeps saying that it doesn't matter what you're working on. It all friggin' works just about the same. If you learn it, you learn it. Like his video that just dropped, he's talking about like an E4 ignition system on a Ford, like an old Ford. And yet all the principles for an ignition system are in that video. And and then he goes further. It's like, I saw that with LabScope where guys start talking about how if you were good at reading ignition waveforms on a LabScope, then you start to LabScope more and more because you get comfortable with the tool. And, a pintle hump on an injector, you can kind of think it's similar to a coil oscillation. And before you know it, you're comfortable, It's so cool that way. Like he's the gift that we'll never be able to repay back, and it just keeps on giving. God bless him.
No, so. That made me look. I never used to look at other car videos, and now that's pretty well all I do. Get home at night, I'm watching either some Scanner Danner or South Main Auto or some Super Mario. Then go to bed and start again.
Super Mario, there's over again. Yeah, Super Mario, there's another cat that is just on another level. Like he's humble as heck too. Like he doesn't think he's anything special. He's very special. Very special. So yeah. And that's what I love about YouTube, because I say the same thing. If it wasn't for social media and it wasn't for YouTube, I still wouldn't be doing this. Not even close. I'd be doing something completely. I'd have checked out 10 years ago. It found me at the right time when I was stagnant, and like yourself, I was starting to get an attitude, just unhappy. I was ground down from what it does to you, right? Of always trying to make hours and production and all that kind of stuff. And if I hadn't have found a couple of Facebook groups where I could just network with other people, and if I hadn't found Paul to show me really what I didn't know, and how to become better, and give me, because it was through what I learned from him that gave me the confidence to keep doing this. Because in a very short period of time, I learned from him that a lot of people didn't know what he was teaching, right? They'd always gotten by the other way with an Identifix or parts cannon. And I learned how to actually test things from him, and then my attitude improved, but my ego got worse. You know what I mean? Because then I was like, I don't care that you're 55 and I'm 35. You couldn't fix that car and I could. So, away with you, you peasant. Yeah. and it's so I owe so much to social media, right? And to him and to that platform. It's been the best thing that has happened to this industry without fail. Guys hate it. I YouTube and me, sometimes I'm tired of seeing people, teach the public how to fix their own car. I'm not behind that. I will be, or I never will be. But man, there's no excuse for not knowing how something works, because you've got a free it's like having a free encyclopedia to the whole world at your fingertips on how something works and how to, like, it's just amazing. It's an amazing tool. Use it properly, people.
It absolutely is.
Yeah. So what, do you have an exit strategy? Like, you're talking about, you're understanding the business side of it a little more. I find that the more I network with owners and the more I network with advisors, and it's not necessarily an exit strategy, but it's helped me be a better mechanic because I understand better why, things have to be done a certain way, or why sometimes we only have the money, the time restraints that we have, right? We understand it better. I appreciate it better. It's still a very strained relationship for sure, but it's kind of what you want to, is that your exit strategy, is to get, you talked about you're the foreman now, right?
Yeah, I'm for, let's say, lack of a better term, I am the foreman of our shop. I mean, given that we only have 4 people, but I'm responsible for the back half.
Right.
So I'm teaching the techs or the apprentices, guiding them on their work, helping them with their work, saying, showing them the ropes and helping them with stuff, trying to teach them things the right way. And with our young tech as well, he's asking questions, I'm answering as best I can, and we're getting the process down. I also talk with our hunter guy, some of our other reps, and deal with broken equipment in the back.
Yeah.
I mean, all that was still trying to make my hours, which sometimes gets a little strained, but it does still works in my favor quite a bit because they know up front what I'm doing, and they understand the strain of that. So I do, and as I being my 20 years experience, I do get a lot more of the bigger jobs because I am more capable of doing them.
Yeah.
We do need to feed feed some of those to the younger tech and get him experienced, but get him experienced the right way when he's comfortable doing it, and when we have the time to afford that as well.
So he doesn't get absolutely drowned underwater on a big job and lose his butt. Flat rate. You want to be able to get them on some of the bigger jobs when they can learn to do it right, be meticulous about it, see the shortcuts, see the process, and they're not so focused on, my God, like, this is only paying 8 hours. I started on a Monday, it's Thursday. You know what I mean? Yeah. Jobs like that, right? It's every flat rate tech has a memory like that, where it was like they knew that engine re was only going to pay 12 hours, and they started on Monday morning and they were in the worst week of their life, and they fired it up on Thursday afternoon, right? And then they're just you're so, at that point, you're just like, feels like you're chewing nails. It's a terrible feeling. Been there. But, we're always told, well, you make it up on the next one, right? So that's because I was going to ask you, so you're still flat rate as a foreman?
Yeah, I am still flat rate as a foreman. If, as we hopefully grow the way we want to in the next couple of years, the idea is for me to move to a salary position, so it's not as strained.
Yeah. But they look after you by the sounds of it, right? Like, they give you some work that you can knock out really fast to keep your hours up, because they know you're pulled away a lot to help and mentor.
Yeah, no, they absolutely do. It's been great. We've developed a really good relationship with our service advisor, the service manager, who's, I think, even just a few years younger than I am.
Right.
And we have a new, within the last, I want to say 4 or 5 years, a new half owner / general manager who he understands our plight a lot better than some others. So he lets us kind of rule that roost as we need to, and so we get stuff done. We make a lot.
Let me ask you a question, kind of a 2-part question. Do you think a service manager has to have been a tech to be a good service manager?
I'd say not necessarily. It would certainly help.
Okay.
In our case, I think our service manager, he went through the first year, but then dropped out of that. I think he dropped out of the program, but his dad was only recently retired from the Toyota dealership in our town, and also had a side business. So in the evenings, he was working on other customer cars, and our service manager, being his son, was a 10, 12, up to 16-year-old kid, pushing cars in and out and helping them work on them at night. So he had a very good working knowledge of how cars work, and he can work on cars.
Yeah.
For a slammed, he'll bring a car in and do an oil change or put on some gloves and help rock out a brake service or a brake replacement, whatever he needs to.
Yeah, because I've seen foremans wind up as managers, right? But I've also worked for guys that they hadn't been, like, they were a manager, but they hadn't turned a wrench on a car in 20 some years, and I think that at that point, it becomes a disconnect, right? The foreman that becomes a manager, like yourself, it's not ancient history, right? Like if you make it to that role of manager and move past the foreman role, it won't be that far removed. But I've seen some managers that, like I said, it'd been 20 years since they'd been a wrench that they, and they were definitely disconnected. Definitely disconnected.
Yeah, why is that brake job taking that long? And whereas if you were a recent tech, why it's taking, and you can at least work around them or help them out with that, rather than saying, get it done now.
Because it's got electronic parking brakes on it, and they're not working the way it's supposed to get me into the service mode. That's why it's taken so long. Like, and then they go, huh? Like, yeah, because the only understanding you have it is that you push a button and that's how the parking brake works. Like, you've never actually had to physically see, what's going on, and you're trying not to break the module and so on and so forth, or you're having to, the scan tool won't communicate. So now you got to find a fuse, and, customer just wanted a brake job done. And then you realize that, like, the things, you can't do the brake job because you can't get the parking brake to work. Yeah. Stuff like that is completely lost on them. It's like, just like, for them, it's another work order, and it's another, why didn't it go right? To you, it's, you knew from, the jump that it was going to be a bugger, and sometimes you don't get the help with that, right? The understanding.
Yeah.
So that's the disconnect when I speak of it. That's what drives me crazy. So
yeah, that can be, it's certainly not a case of where I am right now. I say they'll jump in and work on help you get that brake job out. He's helped me, after doing a valve seal job, I had to pull in a 4-wheel brake job, and the two of us crank that out in under an hour. So we have a very good working relationship.
That's fantastic. That's for the guys that are listening. And there's a lot of owners and a lot of managers in shops that do that same thing. But if you're not, maybe give it a whirl sometimes. I think I've heard of different shops and different dealerships, and they've had the process where you shadow somebody in a completely different department for a day or a week or whatever, right? And I used to think, oh hell, that'd be torture. But I think it would really be good, because I mean, if you took somebody that had been a manager but never actually had been a wrench, right? They're just a management. Their HR skills are phenomenal, whatever you want to call it, but they never wrenched on a car. Well, imagine them being in the service bays for a week, watching what gets done and how it gets done. I can't think that there's any possible way they don't come away with a much better appreciation for what's going on. Same as, like, really good tech should spend a week as an advisor shadowing that. Then you're going to really understand what a grind that job is, because some days you don't get one person that even wants to smile at you. Everybody's mad. Everybody's PO'd. Everybody's cranked because the car is broken under warranty, and oh God, like, it's such an inconvenience and all blah, blah, blah. But you know what I mean? It helps you appreciate that sometimes why the relationships are so strained sometimes between an advisor and a tech, and an advisor and, you understand it better. We've got an upcoming guest, Chris Craig from TikTok. I don't know if you're on TikTok or not, but he's the service advisor that's famous on TikTok for having these conversations with himself, playing two different roles, technician, advisor, about, can you not just do it for 3/10 or free or whatever? Well, he was a fantastic episode, because when you hear his backstory and you hear his trials, what he went through, you forget he's an advisor, and he's not like he's got all the same plight, all the same problems that the mechanics went through. He's just working a different role. It was really good to talk to him, and everybody's going to love that episode when it comes up. But I wish now that my shop is so small, I don't really have, I talk to a lot of customers, a lot of them come in and they just hand me the keys, and I don't even go see the manager. They just tell me, and then I hand it off to him. But I wish back in the day, maybe when I was in a bigger dealership, that I'd spent more time actually, if I'd had that opportunity to shadow them for 3 or 4 days, and would have really understood better, been more sympathetic to what they go through,
Yeah. So. Yeah, it's a different role, especially if you're in a bigger metropolitan area.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's say with us, our town is 20,000 people in this town, and that's just enough people in a town for me.
Yeah.
And with our dealership being so small now, I'm usually up talking with the customers, especially nowadays, and with my changed role.
Yeah.
But, at least with we have one advisor and a parts person / sometimes advisor, and our service manager, and that's all we have for front staff.
Yep.
But they're always back. I'm always discussing with their service advisor, why I'm recommending this. Been doing it long enough together. He knows exactly why. My reason is always on the back of my work order, but he knows why I'm calling something, because we know each other so well.
Yeah.
And, I'm not calling anything it doesn't need, and he can sell it the way it needs to be sold, because small town, bad news travels, or good news travels, bad news travels faster.
Yeah. If you
never hear the good.
No.
You never hear about a good thing you ever fucking did, but heaven forbid you left one smudge on someone's front bumper or something.
If you did the job right, that was just your job, and it wasn't worth celebrating or bragging about, right? Telling everybody. But if you do it wrong, oh my God, the whole world's going to know about it. It's just, I've never understood that. And I'm not to say that some people don't brag about us. They do. But I mean, there's more the attitude of, well, of course they did the job right. That's their effing job. But oh my God, they changed my radio preset, or they changed my battery and didn't program my radio presets back in. I'm going on the internet immediately and complaining about, because now it's going to take me 5 more minutes to put all those presets. Bent. If your life is so easy that that's the one thing that's going to cause you so much stress, I would love to be in your shoes for that day. The worst thing that happened to you is presets lost on a radio. Yeah. Tough life.
They'll always get the survey. They're always the ones that get the survey.
Yep, exactly. Oh, they're looking for it, Christopher. They're looking for it, right? Yeah. They're just looking. They're checking their emails. When am I getting that survey? When am I getting that survey? Like, they're going to hear about me, them sons of bitches. Yeah. That's we could go down a whole rant about that, how I think CSI is just a dangling carrot, and it's never gonna, so
those are the ones that are usually always there for the free coffee, the free Wi-Fi, the warranty work, and to plow your survey.
Yeah, right. And that's the problem. I mean, it's if we didn't have to sell cars to those people, if we only had to work on them, it'd be great. But the motivation is to keep them happy, so they buy another one. And I don't make money off car sales. I make money off of fixing cars when I was at the dealer, and that's what I always used to say. So they can slam the survey. I get it. But if I fix the car and they slam the survey, because that's the other thing, they slam the survey over such stupid things. I've seen it. Coffee in the waiting room tasted terrible. There's a Tim Hortons. Literally, there's a Tim Hortons right across the parking lot. Like, why are you drinking our coffee when you can go to drink Tim Hortons, right? It's just, I don't like Tim Hortons. Starbucks is too far away. Yeah. First world problems. I know, it's rough. So do you want to become a service manager? Is that the...
No, I think I'd probably not. I don't think I'd be the best at being a service manager and having to deal with all that he deals with. I know he deals with far more than I'd ever care to.
Yeah.
But I do like the wrenching. I do like the fixing the cars and working with that. So I don't mind working with the techs as well and teaching them.
Yep.
But I think I'd probably wind up just doing that until, I buy a house in the countryside and build my own little garage and eventually retire away to doing that.
Yeah. So can I understand then that that's like you might want to be a business owner in the future?
Probably it's been a consideration here in the last little bit, but that probably wouldn't be for another 10, 15 years or so.
Yeah.
Till the kids are old enough and not as expensive. And
yeah. Who knows what the cars will be like in 10 more years. That's the thing I keep thinking about. Like, I'm 48, so I definitely intend to be just about done in 10 years of working on cars. Body won't handle it. But even like it just, when I think about where we're going with the technology and the people that will slam surveys, I can't even imagine what they're going to slam a survey on 10 years from now. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's going to be a completely different thing. Completely different. So it's, the surveys kill it. They really do. They take the fun away. So what,
ours are pretty good here, but that's, again, they're a small town and
yeah,
they're literally my neighbors.
Yeah.
I live here, work here, and I think about 4 doors down from my house is one of our customers. And my mother and my mother-in-law are customers as well.
Right. Yeah, so hopefully, not always necessarily the mother-in-law, but the mother, you always hope is going to give you a good review, right? Like, your mom should give you a good review. Mother-in-law, maybe not so much every time, but,
Nah, she loves me.
Yeah, that's good. That helps. That helps. When you say moving, where are you thinking about moving? Like,
more countryside. So, like, if, our area, so there's Coburg and Colburn, and then kind of Grafton in the middle, or Baltimore a little north, somewhere in the vicinity of Coburg, because my family is still here.
Right.
My in-laws are here, and that's where our core support is, and all our friends are.
At first, I was thinking maybe you were thinking something really desolate, like up in the Yukon or something like that. But
nah,
it's cold up there. So
I have one of the babysitters nearby. So
yeah, I keep thinking, making the joke that like when I'm done, I'm just going to buy an RV and I'm going to put a boat on the back of it, and I'm going to head south for the summertime. And when the weather is nice up here, I'll come back up here and fish, Lake Ontario and the Great Lakes up here. But once that weather starts to change again, I'll be in, Florida or Texas, somewhere warm, and I'll just keep fishing all year long. Won't make any money. I'll be a hobo. I'll be living like a Walmartian, the Walmart parking lots with a boat in tow. And I drive past one every night when I leave the shop and come past, and there had to be like 20 RVs in the parking lot of Walmart in Kingston here, and I was like, wow. Like, do they travel together or like,
Yeah, we should get quite a few at the one here. I think they actually had to put a notice sometimes for no overnight parking because they were getting 6 or 7 of the damn things, and it's a fairly big Walmart, but it ain't that big.
Well, and that's the thing. Like security. I knew one that like we had actually a former employee of the shop, and she totally intended to let her apartment go in May, and she was just going to park the RV that she bought in the Walmart parking lot, and that's where she's going to live till like October when it got cold again. So I mean, when they're posting like what they're saying with no overnight parking is they're really saying no squatting, right? Like we don't mind if you were just passing through and you're here one night, maybe 2, but this isn't don't put it down as your mailing address or shit like that, right? Because
you ain't got to go home, but you can't stay here.
That's right. So what is there anything about the product you really don't like?
Not really. Before I started working at Mazda, I never actually really thought about Mazda. Like I'd almost never remember that it was a manufacturer until I started here. How I got the job down here is an old friend, a former friend of mine that I was an apprentice with at Coburg Honda was a technician at the Mazda dealer, and they were looking for a tech, and we had been talking, and I was thinking about moving back down this way, living in Lindsay. My family's down here, and I started dating someone that was down here.
Yeah.
And, we were thinking of moving in together. So I got the job down here, sold my house up here or up in Lindsay, moved down here, and didn't even have an interview. Actually, I just sent in my resume and like, you want the job? Okay, sure. We trust the other guy's judgment. Okay.
Yeah. But otherwise, the product, you don't mind it. You like it. Like, it's nothing really about the product.
No, not really. It's a up and coming product. I think the only say up and coming. It's been around for quite a while, and it's just getting better and better, especially after the 4 years.
Yeah,
making a name for itself, and the product is getting really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
Like mechanically and technically, they're getting very good. We see very little problems in our area. The only problems we really see are people leave the batteries dead too long because they're the car sit for 2 weeks. Oh, why did that happen? Well, you let it sit for 2 weeks in your garage while you were not going anywhere.
Yeah, it has to be used. Yeah, for sure. No, I used to say all the time, right? Like Mazda always had that stigma, of like, oh, it's not a Honda and it's not a Toyota, right? So it was as far as Asian was like third ranked, and I can tell you that after working on Nissan, Mazda eclipsed that all day long. It's such a better, well built product than Nissan.
I fucking hate Nissans. I just finished a clutch job in a 17 Frontier. So that's so it's taking me a day and a bit, like off and on, and I wanted to hang myself in the rafters when I'm working on this. There's nothing wanted to come out. It was a 17 with 60K on it, and everything rusted on it.
Oh, they rust terrible. Awful.
Like
just garbage.
Like 3 hours trying to get the exhaust off it.
Yeah,
because nothing would come loose, nothing's accessible, and it's hate myself for having to do it.
But. And that's a better Frontier to buy because it doesn't have a CVT in it, right?
No, this was a 4-liter 6-speed all-wheel drive for 4-wheel drive.
Yeah. Good truck for a Nissan. As far as Nissan trucks go, it's a good truck.
Yeah, I don't know how they blew the clutch up in it, but that's their problem. 68 grenade at the clutch. Probably taking the 25-foot boat out of the ramp. Like that. Poof.
I'll say they're trying to go somewhere that a Jeep can go. That's what they're doing. That's what I'd meet the people is, you never saw too many Nissans in the trail, and they're like, why is that? Because they only look like they can go there. They really can't. It won't hold up. So you'll come out really broken if you go down the trails, whereas the Jeep guys are like, and I mean, I talk a lot of crap on the product, but I mean, I earn that right to talk on it because I worked on it long enough that I'm like, yeah, there's no hope. They're saying that they're finally done with CVT. They're going to go back to as traditional as a automatic as they can possibly make. I think it's now 8-speed, which maybe 8 speeds in an automatic is too many with the way Ford and everyone else is having issues with their transmissions. But I mean, it'll be interesting because I've said that for years. They build a really good engine in terms of durable. We saw lots of them come in, no oil in them, no coolant in them, put on coolant back in it, fix it, and it was fine. But the transmission was just junk. It didn't matter what you did. You could service the damn thing every 20,000 K. It just will not make it to 150 without needing the tranny. It's just awful. And the automatics, even when they were building before the CVTs and the Frontiers, they had such crappy radiators in them that they would just make a milkshake of the transmission fluid with the cooler. And what would happen is if you caught it early enough, it was good. But we would see countless ones come in that had a brand new transmission in it, and it was already starting to slip again, and the coolant level's down again. And if you caught it early enough, but do you think a lot of shops didn't catch that? And then all of a sudden that customer's like, well, these transmissions are terrible. Well, no, really what was the problem was the radiator. You try to explain that to the customer, like, what do you mean the radiator? Well, it mixed it. And they're not like, listen, if I told you how many neons I saw make a milkshake of the transmission fluid, you'd believe me because they all did it eventually. But,
Hondas too.
Yeah. But it's, oh my God, right? Like every Pathfinder out there just can't keep transmissions in it. Well, if you would stop, because you don't see the coolant leaking on the ground, you assume your radiator's still good. If you actually just went and changed your rad out when you did your transmission, that next transmission would last. But customers don't.
We had it Hondas, we'd get that quite a lot with the milkshake in the tranny, but change it the radiator, flush it out, then it was good to go. The trannies never were ever a problem in there.
Wow.
Say the cooler's blowing up. You tend to caught them just in time, like get a bit of a drivability problem. Oh, yeah. Need a radiator and a tranny flush, and there you go.
So when you have young people coming into your shop, what do you tell them about this industry?
Well, as we were just talking, there's the whole point of this, 5-10 years ago, I said, don't fucking do it. Yeah. And now I'm like, and I tell both of our young apprentices, especially our one that's going to his second year, who's done the OEF program. I see him as me. I was like, you can make a good living at this. I see a lot of him in me. Like he's got the aptitude to be able to do it. He's made some dumb mistakes, but we all do. Just not thinking far enough ahead. And I've taught him far enough ahead to think far enough ahead. I was like, do this. And we've had co-op kids in too. And I tell them, like, if this is something you want to do, then you can do it. I would wholly endorse this, so long as you're in it for the right reasons.
Right. Do you think that's a better move for the young people, is that they go towards a dealership versus an independent? I know that's maybe a tough question.
Yeah, very tough question for me, because my independent days were a long time ago, and that was in my early days where I don't remember a whole lot. But
right,
I think it's probably because I've lucked out at the dealerships that I've been at, that they've been run really well, and we've had a good team. And I know there's complete chaos dealers out there that you wouldn't want to go within 20 square miles of. But that's a very difficult answer, or a question for me to answer on that. I would say go to a dealer being in our area, but if you go to my dealer or the one next door, then you're good. Most of the other dealers in the town probably wouldn't recommend as much.
Right. Yeah. It's still very much the culture of the shop. I've said it all before, people that know my story. If I hadn't made the move from the independent to the dealer way back in like 2001, I wouldn't have made it in the industry. I just couldn't make enough money. The independent wanted me. They just didn't pay enough. Their money wasn't there. They wanted to pay me like $11 an hour, and I was a 4th-year apprentice. I had a ton of tool debt. I'd worked at a truck shop like 2 years before that, where I was making $16 an hour. So all the starters, electrical, all that stuff that I could do on a truck that applied to a car, but all of a sudden I'm back to being, an $11 an hour, lube kid, tire kid, perform safety inspections, like tear all it down so the other guy can come over and look at it, say, yeah, your name, put it back together, right? Because we were doing safety inspections for not enough labor, so you couldn't have him tied up on it. Like, if I hadn't taken the job of the dealer, I don't know what I'd be doing right now. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, the dealer is not, we have a lot of people come in and it seems like it's a real negative about the dealer. And I'm not going to say one person should do one or the other. But I will say that if it hadn't been for me, I wouldn't have made it in the industry. I wouldn't have made it. So I got a lot of bad habits from the dealership. I got a lot of jaded, ideas. It ground me out. I'll never go back to one. But it did. There was something to be said for only having to learn one product and becoming very good at that product, and working with a lot of people that were very familiar with that product. That's the advantage, the culture, like you said, you're in a good shop with great culture. You can be in a dealer with crap culture. I've been in those too. I've seen independent shops with great culture. I've seen independent shops with terrible culture. So the culture is
good and bad everywhere.
Yes, the culture is more important than whether you're a dealer or an independent. So
yeah, that's what I've strived for at making our dealership that way. I mean, it had a pretty good culture as it was, but now I'm trying to further that, especially with our young apprentices coming in, like making it a good experience for them, so they're not just pushing a broom around and just doing oil changes and getting
right. Because they're
calling suspension work, they're doing it. They're calling brake work, they're doing it.
That's the key, right? I mean, we're already in a shortage, so we're in a shortage of people that are leaving, and we're in a shortage of it's not the most enticing thing that people want when they think about what they want to have their children do as a career, or, do they pick that as a job? Like you said, you only wanted to do it for 5 years, right? Way back when.
Yeah.
So that's just, I'm happy that you can say now that you would recommend it again. I'm almost to I'm there again where people that know me and 2 years ago, if they'd asked me, would you recommend this? I'd have said, heck no. This industry is, and this industry, you're not getting a free pass. There's still a lot you've got to do. There's still a lot of improvements to be made, a lot of long overdue improvements, but I think we're getting there. So, and I really appreciate, Chris, you coming on and giving us that perspective, because we need more of that. Sometimes I get like, it's a jaded mechanic and all you do is talk crap about, and you showcase the people that hate this and then what they, it's a bitch fest. No, it's not. It's not meant to be that way. It's just people telling stories about what they had to go through to get where they are, and, what they think is how we fix it. That's it. It's not meant to be a bitch fest. It's just, so.
Gotta see both sides of the coin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anything else you want to say in closing?
No. Well, I think I'd like to quote a great Canadian philosopher who said, "Just remember, folks, we're all in this together."
Hey, if you could do me a favor real quick and comment on, and share this episode, I'd really appreciate it. And please, most importantly, set the podcast to automatically download every Tuesday morning. As always, I'd like to thank our amazing guests for their perspectives and expertise, and I hope that you'll please join us again next week on this journey of change. Thank you to my partners in the ASA group and to the Changing the Industry podcast. Remember what I always say, in this industry, you get what you pay for. Here's hoping everyone finds their missing 10 millimeter, and we'll see you all again next time.